I have a blood debt to fulfill, something for my family.
We owe our debt to our ancestors who somehow put us together.
In Filipino culture specifically, we are taught to feel like we owe the generations before us in exchange for the sacrifices that they made.
Blood debt. It's like forever a debt of gratitude.
The utang na loob, you cannot pay it off as long as you live.
In Blood Debts, we tell the stories of choices and sacrifices to pay back what is owed and pay forward something of value. I'm your host, Leezel Tanglao. On this podcast, we talk about one of the few through lines in people's lives, debt. You'll hear stories from the Filipino diaspora around how debt has impacted all aspects of life, from those in the medical field, the public service sector, to technology and the creative arts. As a journalist, I've spent more than a decade reporting on the financial aspects of debt in diverse communities, but many people carry debts beyond money. They say you can't put a price on a person's life, but apparently you can if you're my father. Actually, $240,000 to be exact. What would you do if you became a homeowner at age 25? Would you take on that responsibility, or would you bounce? That's exactly what happened to me. This is my story of my blood debts. When people remember their childhoods, images of endless summers and ice cream and kids being kids often comes to mind. But for me, I remember counting coins, pennies, nickels, dimes with my mother. When I had enough, I'd roll them up and take them to the bank, not to save them, but to exchange them for cash to buy myself a Happy Meal at McDonald's. You see, that's the only time you could literally buy a happiness. That cheap plastic toy alongside fast food was the highlight of my childhood. It became an escape from the daily fighting and shouting of my parents during those early years as they navigated raising an American-born Filipino in the late 1980s into early 1990s in Lancaster, California. Finally, when they've had enough, they decided to divorce, and my mother and I moved back home to Carson, an urban blue-collar city just 30 miles south of Los Angeles. My mother, Norma Reyes Guzman, is a woman of few words, but also a woman of faith, shaped by the struggles of the motherland she left behind to chase the American dream. She worked overnights and put me through Catholic school and never mentioned my father again. After several rough years of fighting, they finally put an end to the misery that clouded my early childhood and adolescent years. As part of that, they agreed to sell the house I grew up in from age 13 and on. The Carson house was nothing special. It was a 70s-style one-story home that had 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. It was tucked away in a nondescript cul-de-sac, literally next to the 405 freeway. Then the day came. This day would determine how I would live my life the next decade. After years of no direct communication, my mom and I received a letter from my dad's lawyer. It was the news that we always knew would come, and of course it had to come during the recession. Before this, I had little to no contact with my father. He never paid child support. He quit his job rather than get his wages garnished. He sent empty birthday cards here and there, but nothing beyond that. If he had any love for me, he had a funny way of showing it. And at this point, I was into my first job out of college as a newspaper reporter in Southern California. All the while, the house was paid off by my mom while putting me through school.
I've been paid off already this house for 30 years. And now, another 30 years.
It would be a shame to see all that work go away in a flash. I figured it was time to see if my dad would let this go. It's the least he could do. Let me have the house. He owes me at least that. I'll never forget the day he called. I was waiting for another call and the phone rang. I thought it was the call that I expected. It was him. The first thing he says, I'm coming back for the house because I need the money. That's the first thing you tell me after a decade? I tried to reason with him, but I couldn't get a word in edgewise. Then he finally dropped the 10 words I'll never forget. Hey, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be here. Once he uttered those words, I knew there was no point to reason with this man any longer. It was then I made a decision that would change the course of my life the next 30 years. I told my mom we should buy him out. Together, with the help of my uncle, my mom and I applied for a 30-year mortgage at 5.6% interest. There was no question what needed to happen. We would have had to move out and pay just as much of a monthly payment, so why not outright own it? So at the beginning of the recession in 2008, we took on a debt, a blood debt. I was literally paying a debt of a mortgage, and I was also paying a blood debt made of blood, sweat, and tears. And for the next decade, I would be paying for 2 homes as my career took me to the Big Apple. While it's been a challenge financially, I have no regrets. It was something I wanted to do, not just out of utang ng loob, but for love. Utang ng loob is a deep Filipino trait that translates to the debt of gratitude, or more literally, debt of one's inner self. You'll hear this term throughout the series many times.
My ex-husband, he doesn't have utang na loob. Tutu, nanungutang na loob, wala. Kay ba tega na ganang may bayad? Magkolekya mo. That's it. Wala yung makapagalan. The first utang, I sacrifice. Now, the second utang now is my daughter sacrificing. Because she's the one who's paying off of that debt that we have, that we give to his dad. I don't have any more money, and I don't have any more energy to do it.
As for my father, he didn't need to say anything more. He showed me. That was the last time I've ever talked to him again. And in many ways, my father's right. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here. I do owe him a blood debt. But I wouldn't be here without my mother either.
I'm your parents too, okay? Even I got mad with you, or you got mad with me, or whatever happened, you don't have utang na loob from me because you're not born over here. Ibig sabihin tang, kami bait kening inyad mo. Mi bait ka keni uli ko mo ampoyo. Okay? That's why you don't have any utang na loob from me and to him.
She says in the Philippine language, Kapampangan, you were not born here because you asked for it. You were only born here because of me and him. If we didn't make you, you wouldn't be here. You didn't ask to be born, right? While my father may have given me life, it was my mother who kept me alive. She is the one who gives me hope. She is the one who I owe a debt of gratitude, utang ng loob. She's given me the drive, the fire, and love to go for it, to experience all of life, the good, the bad, the struggles and the triumphs and everything that comes with it, and not let fear stop me from aspiring to things beyond my imagination. My father cashed in on my debt to him, $240,000 to be exact. Not my mother. You see, like she always says, dream big because it doesn't cost a thing to dream. There are many sides to debt. This series intends to take you on a journey through defining and redefining debt through the stories of Filipinos in the diaspora. Upcoming stories from guests like Major General Antonio Taguba, rapper Ruby Ibarra are just a sampling of the journeys you'll hear along the way. That's all for this episode. Thank you for listening. To find out more about the series and upcoming episodes and resources, visit blooddebts.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Blood Debts is produced and hosted by me, Leezel Tanglao. This series is a legacy project of the Filipino Young Leaders Program. Shout out to PhilPro Batch 8. This series is dedicated to all those who struggle to talk about uncomfortable issues. And for all those who ever felt overlooked. I see you, I hear you.